Ever get those like late night cravings? You know, the ones where you just want to raid the pantry right before bed?
Oh, yeah.
Well, we're diving into this study on Neuroscience News that kind of suggests those cravings, especially for teens, might be
Huh.
more than just habit.
Interesting.
It turns out our bodies have these internal clocks that affect when and how much we eat.
Okay.
So in this deep dive, we'll unpack how these internal clocks work,
Okay.
what this study found about teens and their eating patterns, and what it all means for things like managing weight.
That's good.
Let's start with this idea of the body's internal clock. It's actually a pretty complex system, way more intricate than just a simple clock on the wall.
Right, and it's officially known as the circadian rhythm, which you might be familiar with. That feeling of being more alert at certain times and then sleepy at others, that's your circadian rhythm in action. But it goes much deeper than just sleep and wakefulness. It's really a network of clocks throughout your body,
Oh, wow.
all synchronized but able to operate somewhat independently, impacting everything from hormone release to, yes, even your eating habits.
So it's not just one clock, but a whole system.
Exactly. Think of it like an orchestra. You have all these different instruments playing their parts, but there's a conductor, the suprachiasmatic nucleus in the brain, that keeps everything in sync.
Okay, that makes sense.
Hmm.
So how does this orchestra affect when teenagers eat?
Well, this study found something pretty intriguing. Regardless of their weight, teens tend to eat the most in the late afternoon and evening. It's not just that dinner is typically later, it seems to be tied to their internal clocks.
As you're saying, it's biology, not just habit.
Precisely. The study suggests those after-school and late-night cravings teens get aren't just because they're bored or used to eating, then
Right.
their bodies are actually primed to eat more during those times.
Okay, this is where it gets really interesting. The study also found that overweight teens ate way more calories in the evening compared to healthy weight teens.
Yes, and that raises some important questions about the link between the timing of our food intake and weight, especially for teens. It doesn't mean all evening eating is bad, but it does suggest that when we eat might be just as important as what we eat,
Mhm.
particularly as our bodies are developing.
Now, this study was unique in how they approached it, right? They actually had teens living in a lab setting for almost 2 weeks. No clocks, no sunlight, just carefully controlled conditions. Why was that so important?
That level of control was crucial because it allowed researchers to isolate the effect of the body clock on eating habits. By removing external time cues, they could be confident that the eating patterns they observed were primarily driven by those internal biological rhythms we've been discussing.
So they basically removed all the noise of everyday life
Yeah.
to get a clearer picture of what the body clock was doing.
What a fascinating approach. Okay, so we've got this internal timekeeping system that plays a big role in when teens feel hungry and how much they eat. But what does this actually mean for us in the real world? What can we do with this information?
Well, one of the most intriguing possibilities is the idea of adjusting light exposure.
Okay.
For most of human history, we live by the sun's schedule.
Now we're surrounded by artificial light, which can really disrupt our natural rhythms.
So you're saying things like phones and laptops at night could be messing with our body clocks?
Yeah.
I know I'm definitely guilty of scrolling before bed.
It's certainly something to consider.
Yeah.
While it's not about completely ditching technology, strategically using light, more bright light in the morning and less blue light from screens at night
Hmm.
could be a way to help reset our internal clocks.
I can see how that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
If our body is more in sync with the natural day-night cycle, maybe those late-night cravings wouldn't be so intense.
Exactly. And it's not just about avoiding those late night snacks.
Right.
It's about working with rather than against your body's natural rhythms to support healthier eating habits overall.
So instead of fighting our biology, we should try to work with it. That's a really interesting concept.
It is, and this research suggests that aligning our eating habits with our internal clocks could be a key piece of the puzzle when it comes to managing weight, especially during the teen years.
That's pretty amazing. So instead of just focusing on what we eat, we also need to think about when we eat.
Yes, and this timing aspect could be especially crucial for teenagers. Their bodies are still developing, and their circadian rhythms are naturally shifted later compared to adults, which might explain why those late-night cravings can be so strong.
This makes me think about parents who might be struggling with their teen raiding the fridge late at night. Maybe they need to cut their teen some slack.
Some understanding is definitely warranted, but it's also an opportunity for parents to have conversations with their teens about healthy habits and how to work with their bodies.
Right.
Maybe shifting dinner a bit earlier or ensuring they get enough bright light in the morning could help.
It sounds like we've been trying to solve this puzzle of healthy eating with some missing pieces. Now, with this understanding of the body clock's role, we might have a better chance of finding solutions that actually work.
What I find so fascinating is that this research points to the power of personalized approaches. What works for one person might not work for another. And understanding your individual circadian rhythm could be key to finding what works best for you.
So beyond light exposure and meal timing, are there other practical takeaways from this study that our listeners can apply?
Absolutely. One thing that often gets overlooked is the importance of consistency.
Okay.
Our bodies thrive on routine, and that includes our eating habits. Trying to eat meals at roughly the same time each day can help regulate your body clock and may even make you feel less hungry overall.
So even small changes to our daily routines could make a big difference.
Exactly. Even something as simple as getting some sunlight first thing in the morning or dimming the lights in the evening can help nudge your body clock in the right direction.
It's wild to think about this internal timekeeping system working behind the scenes, influencing so many aspects of our health, especially when it comes to something as basic as eating.
It really is remarkable. And the more we learn about the circadian rhythm, the more we realize how interconnected it is with our overall well-being.
So to bring this all together, what's the one key takeaway you want our listeners to walk away with today?
Your body clock plays a huge role in when and how much you eat. And this is particularly true during the teen years. But instead of seeing it as a limitation, we can use this knowledge to our advantage.
I love that perspective. Instead of fighting our biology, we can work with it to support healthier habits.
Yeah.
But I'm sure our listeners are thinking, okay, this is all great, but where do I even start?
Here's something to consider. Start by paying attention to when you naturally feel hungry. Does it align with your body's natural rhythms? Are there small changes you could make to your daily routine, like getting more morning sunlight or adjusting your meal times to better support those rhythms?
That's a great point. It puts the power back in our hands.
Mm.
We're not just at the mercy of our cravings, we can actually influence them.
Exactly. And sometimes those small changes can lead to significant shifts in your overall health and well-being.
We've covered a lot of ground today, from the inner workings of our body clocks to how they influence teen eating habits and what we can do to work with them. It really makes you think, like all this time we thought it was just us being weak.
Right. Or just giving in.
But it's like our bodies are working against us.
Yeah. And if we understand that, we can actually use it to our advantage.
So for our listeners who are ready to start making those adjustments, what advice do you have? Like, where should they even begin?
Well, I always say start small.
Okay.
Don't try to change everything at once.
Right.
Maybe just start by getting more bright light in the morning.
Okay.
Open the blinds, take a walk outside, even just sit by a window while you're having your coffee.
Those sound pretty easy to do.
Right. It's about making those small changes that fit into your routine.
Yeah.
And as you start paying attention to your body, you might notice other things you can adjust, like maybe you eat dinner a little earlier or try to avoid screens for an hour before bed.
So even those small things can make a big difference.
Absolutely. Our bodies are complex, but they're also really responsive to even those small changes.
Well, that's encouraging.
It is.
Well, there you have it, folks. We've taken a deep dive into those body clocks, teen eating habits, and how those rhythms can really shape our lives. Hopefully you've learned something new today and feel like you can actually make some positive changes.
That's the goal.
Thanks for joining us. And until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep learning.